They say the desert sun shows no mercy, but the truth is, it simply magnifies the mercy, or the malice, already living in a person's heart. My name is Lorraine Whitcomb, and on the 14th straight day of triple-digit heat in the Concho Valley, that sun exposed a cruelty in my only son I had pretended not to see for years. I was born 67 summers ago in a town that felt baked into the earth like an adobe brick. Back then, droughts were measured in seasons, not days, and neighbors hauled water barrels to porches so children wouldn't faint during their chores. I learned early that community is the difference between parched lips and a cool cup lifted to them. It's a lesson I carried like a talisman through widowhood, single motherhood, and the slow creak of aging joints. But talismans don't work if the one you love refuses to believe in them. My son, Grant, named after his father, whose aircraft never came back from an oil fire's rescue run, stood 6'2", shoulders forged by the oil fields, pride nailed, together by the online echo of self-help gurus. He insisted a man owed nothing to anyone once he'd manifested his personal abundance. The phrase tasted like sawdust to me, but I chewed it whenever he launched into another sermon about boundaries. On that blistering August afternoon, the air was so hot it hissed. You could hear wood shrinking inside its own grain. I had walked the 6 blocks back from volunteering at the Community Cooling Center, a makeshift oasis inside the Methodist Fellowship Hall. All morning, I'd pressed hydrogel pads to pale foreheads, handed out electrolyte packets, and convinced dehydrated ranch hands to close their sleep-heavy eyes for 5 minutes. I gave away my second-to-last bottle of water to an older vet whose fingers trembled too violently to unscrew the cap. Himself. The last bottle I kept for my walk home, telling myself Grant would have the pitcher of lemon water ready by the time I reached our porch. The first sign something was wrong was the silence. Our oak-framed screen usually creaked open at the mere crunch of my shoes on crushed granite. But this time the porch remained lifeless. I reached for the knob and felt metal so hot it branded my palm, and I realized the deadbolt was turned. We had never locked that door in daylight. I knocked, soft at first because I worried he was napping after a night shift at the refinery. No answer. Harder knocks followed, bone against oak. The house absorbed every sound like scorched cotton. The sun glared off the white siding, and heat lifted invisible waves, distorting the wreath of bluebonnets hanging crooked on the door. My scalp prickled beneath my thinning silver hair. "Grant," I called, willing my voice to push through the gaps around the jam. "Sweetheart, open up. I don't have my keys." Still nothing. Sweat trickled behind my hearing aids, tiny miracles of plastic and wire I'd fought Medicare to cover. They hissed with feedback when moisture shorted their microphones, and now they buzzed like angry cicadas. I knocked again, adding a hint of scolding aged mothers perfected. "Grant Allen Whitcomb, you open this door right now." Instead of footsteps, I heard the faint, unmistakable clack of the lock turning further. The sound of a decision forging itself into metal. "Grant?" My own voice quavered. "What's happening?" A pause. Then his baritone bled through. Wood, muted, but cold enough to feel like a slap. "Mom, you can't come in." For a heartbeat, I thought he was joking. Some misguided prank. My laugh died halfway up my throat. "It's 112 degrees, darling. Quit fooling around." "I'm not joking. I need space." "You're smothering me." "I changed the locks this morning." Changed the locks. Without warning. My knees buckled and I perched on the top step because the porch boards seared through the soles of my discount sneakers. The jug of leftover lemon water I'd pictured was now a mirage. Grant's words swam in my head like minnows in boiling water. Space? We lived in a 3-bedroom bungalow. He had the entire converted attic as a studio. And I, with my slow back, I occupied a small room off the kitchen, filled mostly with sewing supplies and grief-softened photo albums. I pressed a palm against the door. "Grant, baby, I don't understand. Let's talk." Inside, please. I am talking. From here. His voice cracked, as if he hated what he was doing almost as much as he wanted to do it. I've got goals, Mom. You don't respect them. I can't be my best self with you hovering. Hovering? The word felt absurd. I swallowed, suddenly conscious of the dryness in my throat. I made you pancakes yesterday because you worked a double. That's not hovering. You don't get it. The sentence thumped like a gavel. Another minute passed. The sun baked the shingles overhead. Tar smell drifted down. My hearing aids crackled louder. I considered walking back to the church, but dizziness washed over me. I'd already given away my water. Think, Lorraine. One neighbor, Amelia Trujillo, lived 3 doors down. She was 81 and kept 3 rescue poodles who barked at clouds. I doubted she had air conditioning strong enough for both of us. The next nearest house with reliable AC was Mr. Randall's, a retired lineman who'd covered his entire living room in Dallas Cowboys memorabilia and once confessed. He found the constant brightness of my volunteer smile suspicious. I tried the knob again, fire in my fingers. Grant, at least pass me a jug. I'm dehydrated. Silence. Painful, stretching silence. Grant. My voice tattered. People die out here. Something clanged inside. Maybe a pot flung against the sink. Then footsteps receding. He wasn't just ignoring me. He was distancing himself from my desperation. That was the moment the fear slipped its leash. I rose unsteadily and shuffled toward the tiny band of shade cast by the porch post. My chest fluttered like a trapped sparrow. I dialed 911, but the screen on my phone was black. Battery dead. I'd been too busy wiping foreheads to notice the battery icon dwindling. Sweat blurred my vision. I fumbled through my canvas tote for the spare charger, but the cable coiled uselessly in my palm. I had no outlet, no power bank. I thought of crossing the street to borrow a phone, yet the asphalt shimmered like a cauldron lid. It could shred, bare skin right through cheap soles. I had to conserve energy. Voices drifted from the sidewalk. 2 teenagers on skateboards, bravado melting off them in the heat. I raised a trembling hand. "Could you help me?" I called, but my words floated weakly. They rolled past, earbuds rendering them deaf to anyone over 30. Minutes bled into a half hour. I forced myself to count breaths, to recall tips from the Red Cross pamphlet: find shade, sip water, loosen clothing. Shade? I huddled behind the mailbox, a sliver of mercy about the width of my forearm. Sip water? None. Loosen clothing? I peeled the damp linen blouse off my shoulders, leaving my arms bare to the blazing world. All the while, the sun climbed higher, as if testing me. How much faith can one woman hold when her child bars the door? My answer came down the sidewalk, in the shape of a stranger. He was lean, maybe late 40s, wearing a Postal Service polo darkened by sweat. Our regular carrier had requested medical leave after heat stroke, and since then, replacements rotated daily. This man, name badge reading, S. Hollister, walked with shoulders rounded inward, as if shrinking from the glare. He paused at my gate. I must have looked spectral, blouse open, hair plastered, eyes fever bright. "Ma'am, you all right?" he asked, shifting the mail tote. My son locked me out. It felt unreal to say aloud. "No water." His brows knitted. Without hesitation, he unclipped a half-gallon jug from his belt. USPS allowed carriers to bring large personal water coolers during the heat emergency, and handed it to me. "Take it. I'll fill up at the next stop." I drank like the parched earth itself. Cool liquid coursed down my throat, reviving brain synapses that had started shutting doors. When I handed back the jug, tears wet my cheeks. From gratitude, humiliation, something nameless. "Do you want me to call somebody?" he asked. My voice emerged raspier. "Could you knock? Maybe he'll open for a stranger." He mounted the steps and rapped sharply. USPS, package for Whitcomb. Inside, boards creaked. Through the glass pane, I saw Grant's silhouette pause. Then I heard him, voice muffled but unmistakable. Leave it on the porch. Needs a signature, sir, the carrier improvised. No, it doesn't, Grant snapped. Footsteps retreated. No door opened. The carrier exhaled a slow whistle and stepped back. That's rough. You need me to call the sheriff? I wiped my mouth with my sleeve. Not yet. Thank you. I'll figure it out. He pulled a slip of paper from his route book. My sister runs the shelter downtown. Cooling center's full, but they keep cots for emergencies. Tell her Sam sent you. He scribbled a number and pressed it into my hand before walking on, his figure wavering in the heat haze like a mirage. I stared at the paper. Admitting defeat meant leaving home and giving Grant exactly the independence he claimed to crave. But I wasn't ready to concede. A mother's love is stubborn. It clings to hope long after logic withers. I scanned the street again. This time I spotted 14-year-old twins, Carter and Connor Alvarez, dragging a garden hose across their yard. Their father, a paramedic working overtime, had set up a kiddie pool for them under strict orders to stay hydrated. The boys worshipped Grant, who let them test drive his gaming chair. Maybe they could be my bridge, I called out, voice cracking. They jogged over, concern painting freckles across their noses. Ms. Whitcomb, you look fried, Carter said. Your brother friend locked me out, I explained quickly. Could you ask him to open the door? They exchanged looks. Teen loyalty wrestled with decency. I'll try, Connor offered. He raced up the steps and knocked his secret rhythm. 3. Quick, 2 slow, 1 quick. It had once meant pizzas here. Through the glass, I saw Grant hesitate longer this time. But when he spoke, his words iced over. Not now, guys. Mom's being dramatic. Connor turned, cheeks redder than the heat could account for. Sorry. Ms. W., he says he needs space. I nodded, swallowing shards of pride. Thank you for trying. Carter held out the hose. At least cool your wrists. I doused my hands, savoring the shock of cold municipal water. It wasn't potable, but the chill revived me. The twins retreated, puzzled. Minutes later, the rumble of a service van approached. The side read, Concho County Electric Co-op. Out hopped Ruthie Barr, a lineman I'd known since she wore pigtails. She was here to inspect transformers strained by the heat wave. When she saw me slumped by the steps, she cut the engine and jogged over. By now, my ordeal had lasted over an hour. I relayed the story in bursts. Ashamed heat made me ramble. Ruthie listened, then said, Girl, I replaced your attic fan last year. I know your son. He's got a good heart. Just buried under layers of YouTube nonsense. Let me talk to him. She marched up, boots ringing authority, and pounded with the side of her fist. Grant Allen, open this damn door. Your mama's about to stroke out. Her voice was the county's voice, unafraid, unpolished. But Grant responded only by switching on the attic air conditioner. I heard it hum through vents, mocking the suffocating porch. Ruthie kicked the jam. Low down shame, she muttered. Then her eyes sparked. Lorraine, stand back. She rummaged in her van, returning with a thermal imaging camera used to spot line hotspots. Pointing it at the door, she snapped a photo. The screen glowed, deep red where Grant's body heat flared behind the planks. Got proof you were inside residence during welfare check, she said. Sheriff can cite him for endangerment. That statement felt like pouring kerosene on a dying campfire. But desperation is combustible. I allowed her to text the image to Deputy Lee, a man whose wife I'd once tutored for her GED. Lee called within 5 minutes. Ms. Whitcomb, you want me to swing by? Pride battled safety. Finally, I whispered, please. 20 minutes. Later, the squad car rolled up, red and blue lights mercifully silent. Half the neighborhood watched from shaded windows. Lee stepped out, wiping his brow. Grant, he called through cupped hands. Need a word. No response. Lee tried official terms, citing fire code, occupant safety. Grant remained a ghost. Then, Lee did something unexpected. He appealed to him not as an officer, but as a man whose mother also grew old alone. Son, when your daddy crashed, this woman kept her promise to raise you kind. Maybe you forgot the kind part today, but you can... Remember now. Open up before this heat takes something you can't replace. For a breath, I believed Grant would cave. The knob rattled, but only to secure the chain. I'm fine, he shouted. She can go to a hotel. Lee's jaw tightened. He radioed. For backup. 1 EMT unit, 1 social services liaison. Protocol, he told me gently. My vision tunneled. It felt like I was giving over my life to bureaucracy. The neighborhood gathered. Front doors cracked open. Whispers floated. Mr. Randall emerged, waving a battery-powered fan like a preacher holding scripture. The Alvarez twins' mother brought a cooler of ice. Amelia trudged over with frozen dog treats, pressing them into my palms as makeshift cold packs. Seeing them, people I'd baked casseroles for when relatives died, stitched costumes for during county fairs, I felt a swell of stubborn grace. If Grant wouldn't be family, the block would. Community is hydration for the soul. The EMTs arrived with a gurney. They checked my vitals, declared I was 1 decimal shy of heat exhaustion. One suggested taking me to St. Anne's. I shook. My head. Leaving felt like surrender. That's when something in the crowd shifted. A low murmur rose, disapproval sharpening into resolve. Mr. Randall, usually reclusive, hoisted his fan like a badge. Boy's lost his compass, he declared. Ruthie crossed her arms. Time we set it true. Deputy Lee tried to calm them, but compassion turned combustible. They weren't out to harm, they wanted to protect. Yet fear tightened my chest. Mob justice can scorch as hot as any sun. Then the front door finally opened. Not wide, but enough for Grant to step onto the threshold, chin lifted defensively. Sweat glistened on his brow despite the AC at his back. He scanned the assembly, these neighbors he'd grown up among, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. I said I need space, he repeated, but softer. Mr. Randall snorted. Space? You gave your mama heat stroke, son. A ripple of agreement answered. Grant's shoulders tensed. I took a shaky step forward, positioning myself between him and the crowd. Everyone, please, let my boy speak. For a second, the entire block held its breath. Grant's lips parted. His gaze darted from my blistered palms to the gurney. Regret shimmered. But ego is a wildfire. It consumes reason faster than you can stomp it out. I don't know anybody here, he said, voice rising. I'm not some charity case. She's manipulating you. Gasps. Whispers. My heart cracked like dry adobe. Lee eased closer, hand hovering near his holster. Not for a gun, but for authority. Grant stepped back toward the door, maybe to retreat, maybe to slam it forever. In that instant, something snapped inside Mr. Randall. The old lineman swung his battery fan like a paddle, aiming not to strike Grant but to block the doorway. Not one more minute of AC for you while she suffers, Randall growled. Grant dodged, but his heel caught the threshold. He stumbled, arms pinwheeling, knocking over the ceramic planter that held my late husband's rose cutting. The pot shattered, soil spilling like dark blood across the porch. A collective cry rose. Mothers, fathers, children, echoing outrage. Grant scrambled to his feet, but Ruthie intercepted, gripping his upper arm with the strength of someone who climbs poles in storms. Her eyes glinted. Apologize. Now. Grant opened his mouth, but before any word formed, the wood beneath us groaned, the porch board he'd cracked last winter giving way. He fell again, this time through the splintering plank, leg sinking up to the thigh. Everyone lurched forward. Even Lee cursed, sending the EMTs racing up with a splint. Grant screamed, raw animal sound that slashed through the heat haze. Sweat, pain, humiliation, it all burst in that cry. I knelt, ignoring the nails snagging my skirt, and cradled his head. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. For the briefest breath, our eyes locked. Terror eclipsed pride. He whispered, Mom, help me. But the porch was still collapsing. Randall's weight cracked another joist. Ruthie shouted for everyone to back off. The EMT captain called for a rescue jack. Wooden slats splintered under my knees. Heat wavered, sirens distant yet rushing. In the confusion, no one noticed the live electrical conduit Grant had modified last spring snaking through the crawl space, until it sparked, showering us with angry blue arcs. The crowd screamed. Someone yanked me backward. Grant was still wedged inches from the sparking wire. Everything slowed. The sun, the shouting, the sirens, all receded. All I saw was the raw fear in my son's eyes. I dove forward, fingers outstretched, determined to wrench him free, and a deafening crack split the air as the conduit snapped loose, whipping toward us like a coiled serpent. The last thing I remember before the white flash was Grant's voice, ragged with apology, shouting my name. The world erupted into blinding light and splinters. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow I have a special story for you. You don't hear the sound of your own heartbeat until everything else is silent. In the half-second after the conduit snapped and lit the porch in electric blue, the neighborhood went mute, as if the heat wave inhaled and forgot how to exhale. I floated inside that hush, weightless, vision bleaching into a single bloom of white. Somewhere distant, I registered cedar splinters, the iron tang of scorched copper, and Grant's voice, my child, screaming my name through a throat scraped, raw with fear. Then gravity returned. Pain followed like an ambulance with no siren, just the relentless thump, thump, thump of blood. I lay on gravel beneath the porch, the heat of the earth seeping into my spine. Somebody, Randall, Ruthie, was shouting for cutters, jacks, anything to free Grant's leg before the smoldering joist caught fire. Deputy Lee barked orders, the EMTs snapped open shears, and Sam Hollister's postal uniform streaked my peripheral vision as he dragged the garden hose closer, water gushing across broken boards to drown sparks. I tried to rise, but a searing line of pain zipped across my right shoulder where a wood shard had skated flesh. Shock kept bleeding at bay, but every pulse felt like a nail tapped into bone. Hands pressed me down, gentle, insistent. Oxygen mask descended. Plastic smelled of new shoes and panic. "Ma'am, stay still," an EMT said, voice muffled through my roaring ears. "You took a jolt and a fall. We've got you." Through splintered gaps, I saw Grant pinned thigh-deep, crutching himself on palms calloused from refinery shifts. His face, once handsome in its youth-fed arrogance, warped by agony and dawning regret. Ruthie pried boards away while Randall wedged a jack. Sparks hissed in puddled hose water. One wrong move and we'd be headlines. Electrocuted while neighbors watched. Time kinked. A pry bar squealed, wood moaned, and at last, Grant's legs slid free, bloody through ripped jeans. The EMT team swarmed him, packing gauze, slipping a cervical collar around his neck even as he reached toward me, eyes huge beneath soot-streaked lashes. "Mama," he rasped. First time he'd used that childhood name in years. I tried to squeeze his hand, but another medic blocked me, stabilizing his femur with an inflatable splint. Sirens crescendoed. Fire truck, additional ambulance, the county inspector's SUV. The cooling center volunteers I'd served with earlier spilled onto lawns, drawn by the strobing lights. Someone filmed on a phone. The Heatwave had found its spectacle. They loaded us into separate ambulances, protocol. As paramedics fixed electrodes to my chest, I caught slanted glimpses of my home. Porch sagging, charred noses of joists jutting like broken ribs, bluebonnet wreath trampled, soil from Grant's fall steaming on sun-scorched planks. Everything looked wilted, as though the house itself was ashamed. St. Anne's trauma bay smelled of bleach and burned wiring. While doctors stitched my shoulder, 12 neat sutures, and cleared me of arrhythmia, a social services liaison hovered with a clipboard labeled Elder Endangerment, Electrical Hazard Case, 5274. She asked if I felt safe returning home. "Don't know if I have a home left," I muttered. She pressed, gently, professionally, about Grant's history. Any prior incidents, financial control, emotional manipulation. Every answer knotted my stomach. Yes, he paid the mortgage. Yes, he sometimes confiscated mail, so the junk wouldn't stress me. No, he'd never struck me, but I'd seen his temples pulse with anger when I misplaced his protein supplements. Those small admissions turned the liaison's pen into a scalpel, carving away excuses I'd layered over years of maternal denial. Across the hall, Grant screamed as they reset his fractured femur. The sound chilled every fluorescent tube in the ceiling. "He's in pain," I whispered, a plea disguised as observation. The liaison's gaze softened. "Pain doesn't excuse neglect that could have killed you." They admitted me overnight for cardiac monitoring. In my private room, I stared at the popcorn ceiling, tracing shapes. A horse, a storm cloud, a dove losing feathers. Each shape morphed into Grant's face before dissolving. I tried to pray, but words melted in the thermal updraft of guilt. Around 3 a.m., Deputy Lee stepped in, hat respectfully removed. He briefed me. The city had red-tagged the house, deeming it uninhabitable until rewired. Fire Marshal suspected amateur modifications, Grant's handiwork, had overloaded the conduit. Code violations stacked like kindling. An investigator would likely file misdemeanor charges, felony if they proved willful tampering. He could go to jail? I asked. Lee exhaled through his mustache. Judge might suspend time in favor of community service, counseling. Depends how your statement reads. The air tasted metallic. I pictured Grant limping in an orange jumpsuit. Even after everything, the thought ripped me open. "He's still my son," I murmured. Lee placed a calloused hand on the bedrail. "And you're still alive because half this block loves you. Don't forget who put you in danger." Sleep finally claimed me before dawn, dreams flickering between nursery lullabies and the sizzle of live wires. I woke to sunlight diluted by tinted glass and the rhythmic whoosh of the IV pump. A nurse unhooked leads, calling me a model patient. She mentioned that Grant was in surgery to insert a titanium rod. He'd be out 4 hours, then move to orthopedics. No visitors until late afternoon. My phone, charged now, built a mountain of notifications, voicemails from church friends, texts from cooling center staff, a news alert. Son locks mother out during record heat. House explodes. The headline inflated reality, but truth hid inside the sensationalism like a bruise under makeup. I silenced the device and asked the nurse for clothes salvageable from last night. She produced my skirt, torn but wearable, and the blouse, sliced, down the back by EMT shears. I donned a donated tee emblazoned with St. Anne's Cardiology Fun Run 2021 and limped to the bathroom mirror. The reflection startled me. Silver hair frizzed with soot, suture line like red thread across my shoulder, eyes bloodshot but flinty. Lorraine Whitcomb looked every second of her 67 years and, for the first time, older. Yet beneath exhaustion flickered a strange luminescence, the stubborn glint of someone who'd survived. By late afternoon, the orthopedics ward buzzed like a hive. I hobbled down the corridor clutching a foam cup of lemon ice. Grant's room door stood ajar. Inside, he lay pale against stark sheets, leg elevated in traction, eyelids half-masked from anesthesia. Machines encircled him, in soft beeps. The grandeur he carried like armor was gone, melted by morphine and shame. A nurse adjusted his drip and nodded me closer. I sat, careful not to jostle tubes. "Mama," he breathed, surfacing from fog. Tears pooled instantly. "I'm so sore." "Shh." I brushed hair from his brow. There was still ash on his temple. "Rest. We'll talk when you're stronger." But he pushed. "I heard the police. Charges. Please." He swallowed a sob. "Don't let them take me." The plea pierced deeper than the conduit's spark. My maternal instinct surged, ready to shield. Yet a new steel threaded my resolve, tempered last night in white fire. Consequences aren't enemies, Grant. Sometimes they're teachers. He squeezed my fingers with surprising strength. "I don't need lessons. I need you. You." The very word my first memory of him saying, tiny, sticky palms against my cheeks, giggling, "You, Mama." Now it returned like a boomerang edged in. "Guilt." "I'm here," I said, but didn't promise more. Soon his eyelids drooped. Sedation reclaimed him. I kissed his knuckles and slipped out where the social worker waited. She'd scheduled an interview to formalize statements. I agreed, but asked for one errand first. The taxi dropped me at Our Lady of Perpetual Shade, not a church, but a converted roller rink run by Samaritan Shelter. Sam Hollister's sister, Deborah, managed triage for heat victims. She recognized me instantly, ushered me to her cramped office stacked with donated popsicles. I handed her the USPS slip Sam had given and explained I might need temporary beds, for myself and possibly my son post-release. She frowned, tapping a wait list already 22 cots long. "It's record heat, Lorraine, but I'll prioritize you. Folks here owe you. You stitched quilts for our last fundraiser." Gratitude warmed me more gently than the sun ever could. Still, the reality bit. My address was a condemned shell, my bank account shallow after widow pension stagnation. Renting an apartment on short notice felt like climbing a dune barefoot. I left the shelter with a loaner phone charger and a revelation. Survival was no longer small-scale hydration. It required infrastructure, legal, financial, emotional. I'd procrastinated building. 2 evenings later, the city council convened an emergency session about heatwave safety ordinances. I attended, arm in sling, shoulder aching, but mind razor sharp. TV crews crowded the aisle, hungry for more sound bites after the heatwave house explosion story went statewide. I signed up to speak, not to exonerate Grant, but to advocate for cooling grants so no parent faced a devil's bargain between electricity bills and groceries. When my name was called, I walked to the podium, slow but unbowed. Cameras red-eyed. Me. Council members shuffled papers. I recounted how a single locked door nearly cost 2 lives, how code violations lurked in countless attics where pride outpaced knowledge. I urged them to fund neighborhood audits, apprentice programs, youth, stipends to learn safe wiring, turning potential culprits into caretakers. Applause rose, not thunderous, but sincere. As I stepped down, a reporter cornered me. "Do you forgive your son?" Forgive. The syllables felt heavy as wet denim. "Forgiveness is a climate we choose," I said. "But even desserts bloom after so. Rain." I hoped that metaphor was enough to satisfy her hunger. Grant was discharged with crutches, cast, prescription for anticoagulants, and strict orders to avoid stairs. Our house uninhabitable, he faced the same housing abyss. The refinery. HR rep visited the ward, explaining disability leave forms. She also hinted that heatwave negligence might violate company ethics. Grant's shoulders sagged beneath hospital gown linen. I arranged a motel room near the shelter, 2 nights paid by a church benevolence fund. He thanked me in monosyllables, eyes darting anywhere but mine. When I left him there, door clicking, shut, guilt wrestled relief in my belly. That night, lightning flickered without thunder, dry storms dancing over parched ranch land. I lay on a shelter cot, fan oscillating above 20 snoring bodies, and wondered if the desert sky mimicked my heart, flashes of love across an expanse of unresolved dark. Morning brought news. City inspectors found asbestos in the crawlspace. Full remediation required. Insurance covered some, but deductibles soared. I spent hours on hold with adjusters, passing from supervisor to supervisor like a baton nobody wanted. Meanwhile, social services liaison emailed that Grant's hearing was set for Tuesday. Elder neglect charges with potential diversion program. He'd need a lawyer. I visited him at the motel to break the news. He sat in a chair, cast propped on milk crates, room smelling of stale fries and defeat. "I can't pay an attorney," he muttered. "There's legal aid," I said. He stared at the muted TV, background of a talk show where audience clapped for a reconciled family. "Do you hate me?" Hate, such a small word for a spectrum of ache. "I love you," I said. "That hasn't changed. But love and trust aren't twins. Trust has to heal like your leg, slow, painful, deliberate." His jaw trembled. "I'll make it right." "Start by showing up in court," I replied, handing him a bus schedule. Tuesday dawned with asphalt already softening under rising heat. Outside the courthouse, protesters held signs, "Protect our elders, heat kills too." Media vans idled. I maneuvered through whispers, my sling a badge of the saga. Inside, Grant hobbled beside a public defender, soft-voiced woman named Karen Cho. The judge, Honorer Maria Espinoza, listened to arguments about negligent endangerment. Karen emphasized Grant's injury, his immediate remorse, his clean record. Prosecution stressed deliberate lockout during extreme weather, illegal electrical work. When called to testify, I steadied at the lectern. Memories flashed, baby toes. Kicking, first broken heart, that terrible porch. My statement blended truth and mercy. I described heatstroke symptoms, the lock, the conduit. Then I told the court how Grant once biked 6 miles at 12 years old to buy me my favorite peach soda after a migraine. "People can hold harm and kindness in the same hands," I said. "The question is, which they choose when the sun tests them." Judge Espinoza sentenced Grant to 12 months probation, 200 hours community service at the cooling center, mandatory electrical safety certification, and ongoing counseling. A fine, too, one he couldn't afford. Relief warred with apprehension in his eyes. Outside, reporters pounced, but I shielded him, shepherding us toward the bus stop. A midsummer dust devil spiraled down Main, scattering leaflets. Grant's crutch skidded. I grabbed his elbow, automatic. We locked eyes, an old rhythm of dependability re-sparking. "I'll find a way to pay the fine," he muttered. "We'll find a way," I corrected, then heard how enabling that sounded. I amended, "I'll guide, you'll labor. That's the bargain." He nodded, acceptance tinged with humility, a new expression on his face. The next 10 days blurred into routine. Mornings at cooling center where Grant logged service hours mopping floors, restocking electrolyte sachets, apologizing to seniors who recognized him from the news. Afternoons in legal aid offices, insurance calls, property repair bids. Nights we slept in separate corners of Samaritan shelter, unspoken boundary. Trust rehabbed under fluorescent lights and plastic-covered mattresses. One scorch-lit afternoon, Grant limped in from community service shift early, face shiny with effort. He'd convinced the hardware store to donate smoke detectors to distribute alongside water kits. Pride, not arrogance, but honest pride, colored his cheeks. "Dad always said Whitcombs fix their mess," he told me. The name of his father, spoken, without bitterness, filled the shelter's greasy air with a ghost of heroism. Progress glimmered, but storm clouds brewed elsewhere. The refinery emailed. An internal review concluded Grant's off-hours negligence conflicted with the company's safety mission. Suspended without pay pending further decision. Grant read the letter, knuckles blanching on crutch handles. "I'm going to lose everything," he whispered. He had already lost the truck. Lender towed it from motel lot after missed payments. Credit card balances ballooned. I offered financial counseling workshop flyers. He folded them absently. That. Night, just past midnight, thunder finally cracked. A real storm. Wind whipping the shelter's plastic sheeting, temperature plunging 20 degrees in an hour. Rain hammered parched soil, the first real downpour in weeks. Most residents cheered. I watched Grant by the doorway, face upturned, letting rain soak his bandaged leg cast where plaster met skin. Tears merged with raindrops. "Storms cleanse," I said behind him. He nodded, but floods still drown. 2 days later, Deputy Lee visited the shelter. He requested to speak with Grant about a new matter. I accompanied them to the rec room where stale bingo chips littered tables. "A neighbor filed restraining complaint," Lee explained. "Says you threatened to sue them for filming the incident, told them you'd ruin their credit." Grant's eyes widened. I just asked them to delete the video. It's humiliating." "Perception matters," Lee cautioned. "Stay calm, keep distance." He handed Grant a formal warning. Frustration flared in my son's gaze, but he inhaled deeply, counting silent beats. "Yes, sir." After Lee left, Grant pounded crutch tips into linoleum. "One mistake and the world brands me monster." "One mistake repeated," I corrected gently. His shoulders slumped. Evening settled. Shelter volunteers served chili. Dogs. Fans rattled. I retired to my cot, reading city housing brochures under dim light. Noise outside the loading bay drew my attention, a muted argument. Peeking through blinds, I saw Grant facing 2 refinery supervisors in reflective shirts. They spoke inaudibly, but posture told the tale. Finality. When they drove off, Grant sagged against the brick wall, silhouette bowed. Hours later, unable to sleep, I paced the hallway. A distant cough echoed. I pushed exit door open, night air cooler, post-rain petrichor drifting. In the lot, shadows moved, Grant limping between puddles, crutches splashing. He stopped by dumpster, retrieved a duffel bag, his only possessions, and slung it across back. The shelter requirement of nightly check-in had passed. If he left, now he forfeited his cot. "Grant," I whispered shout. He froze, turning slowly. "I can't stay here, Mom. I'm poison to everyone. Running won't fix anything." I descended steps, heart pounding. "Come inside." But headlights swept across us, a police cruiser gliding into lot. Deputy Lee again, accompanied by a stern woman in a blazer, county probation officer. They exited, rubber soles crunching gravel. "Grant Whitcomb," the officer called, unfurling. "Documents." "You missed your first counseling appointment and left registered residence without update." "That violates probation terms." Grant's face drained what little color remained. Rain-slick asphalt mirrored blue patrol lights, casting him in aquatic glow. He tightened grip on crutches, gaze flicking toward chain-link gate, flight instinct pulse. I stepped forward, voice steady yet imploring. "He's here now. Let's sort paperwork. No need for escalation." The probation officer shook her head. "Protocol. We'll transport him to intake for overnight hold until arraignment." Grant's lips parted, a silent no. He turned. Toward me, the boy who locked me out, the man trying to step back in. And in his eyes I read both plea and confession. Rain began again, soft, relentless. Lee approached with cuffs. My heart hammered. The asphalt hissed under fresh rainfall, and in that hiss I heard choices chanting, "Abandon him to learn, protect him to death, stand firm between love and law." I opened my mouth, not knowing which path my words would carve, and a deafening Crash erupted as lightning struck the transformer at the edge of the lot, plunging everything into darkness. Darkness. For one vast instant, nothing existed but the hammering of my pulse and the ozone bite of lightning. The shelter parking lot vanished. Even the cruiser's strobes died mid-blink as the transformer exploded, showering cobalt sparks across asphalt already slick with rain. My skin tingled as though the electricity had looked for a body, and, finding none, left its fingerprint on the air instead. Deputy Lee cursed. The probation officer shrieked, stumbling back onto a puddle, clipboard splashing. The entire Samaritan shelter hummed with sudden panic, windows blooming yellow as emergency exit lights flickered on battery backup, voices overlapping in question marks. Above us, the pole-mounted transformer flamed orange, spitting droplets of molten metal before settling into sullen glow. In that strobing half-light, I saw Grant, jaw clenched, crutches planted wide, silhouetted, against the burning sky. Each raindrop that hit his face steamed like incense off a censer. For a moment, just one fragile moment, all authority melted, and we were nothing but frightened mammals under a storm. Inside, I shouted, grabbing the probation officer by her blazer sleeve. She hesitated, eyes wide behind rain-stippled glasses, then nodded and splashed toward the loading dock door. Lee herded us with flashlight drawn, but its beam fought the downpour, like a twig versus river. Grant shifted weight onto his good leg. "Mom, can you see?" "I'm fine," I answered, though my shoulder throbbed where sutures pulled under wet cotton. "Move!" He hobbled, waterlogged cast dragging like cement. Lightning strobed again, closer this time, backlighting his frame so sharply I swore I could see the titanium rod inside his bone. We reached the door. Shelter staff yanked it open, ushering us through. The cafeteria had become triage. Lanterns, battery lanterns, even cell phone flashlights taped to juice bottles. Cots jammed in rows, each occupant a portrait of uneasy shadows. Murmurs rose like locusts. The storm's roar muffled internal whispers of shame and suspicion. All that mattered was survival. Again, shelter director Deborah, Sam Hollister's sister, appeared, ponytail soaked. "Backup generators blown," she announced, voice pitched so it carried but didn't scare. "We need calm. Anyone medically fragile to the chapel. It has skylights and cross-ventilation." Staff hustled to obey. Deputy Lee conferred with the probation officer under a flickering exit sign. Her name tag. I finally read it. Angela Morse, P.O. 3rd. Rain had smeared ink down her cheek like mascara. She removed her glasses, wiped them on damp sleeve, and shot Grant a gaze equal parts frustration and reconsideration. "Protocol still stands," she muttered, though softer now, as if the storm had blurred ink on her rules too. Grant held his wrists out, expecting cuffs. Lee hesitated. The hush inside the cafeteria thickened, eyes tracking the tableau, collective energy deciding. This was not the porch. This was community ground again, but circumstances had flipped. The law looked harsh, the trespasser looked heroic simply. For standing minus electricity. A shrill cry cracked the tension, a toddler somewhere behind the soup counter. A woman yelled, "He's having a seizure!" Everything snapped toward the child. Without thinking, Grant shoved his crutches under one arm and propelled past Lee toward the commotion. I followed, heart banging. We reached a table where a young mother cradled her boy of maybe 3. His small body jerked, limbs rigid, lips cyanotic. Heat? Fear? The generator's crash had killed the fans. Stale humidity clung to skin thick as cloth. "I need cold compress," I barked. Years of cooling center volunteer work took over before grief could. Someone handed a bag of still frozen meat, patties from the kitchen freezer, a miracle chunk of ice. I wrapped it in my sling and placed it under the child's armpits. Grant crouched, tricky on one leg, and slid his sweatshirt under the boy's head to prevent impact. "Put him on his side, Mom," Grant coached the mother, surprisingly calm. Don't restrain, just let it pass. He had learned this at refinery safety trainings, the irony not lost on either of us. The seizure eased. Color seeped back into small cheeks. The mother sobbed gratitude. Around us, whispers swelled. That's the Heatwave guy. He's helping. Maybe story wrong. Deputy Lee watched, cuffs dangling unused at his belt. Probation Officer Morse scribbled notes, but her pen's fury had cooled. By dawn, the storm sputtered out. Crews arrived to douse transformer remnants and string temporary lines. The parking lot smelled of wet ash and earth-breathing relief. Inside, Deborah distributed instant coffee brewed over sterno cans. We gathered like pioneers after prairie fire, counting survivors, counting our own resilience. The toddler slept, peacefully, curled against his mother on a cot draped with reflective emergency blankets. Angela Morse called Grant and me to the administrative nook near reception. Her blazer had dried stiff. She flipped open a new form. Given extraordinary circumstances, she said, I'm granting a 48-hour courtesy delay on your violation. Attend your next counseling session, update your address, and you won't be detained. Grant stammered thanks. She held up a finger. But miss one more requirement, and lightning won't bail you out. We signed acknowledgments. Lee offered. A rare smile, thin but genuine. As he left, he murmured to me, Your boy's learning. Keep him on that road. The shelter repaired generator by afternoon, but fire marshals declared the wing with transformer view unsafe. Overflow meant cots were reassigned. Deborah pulled me aside. I've got families with infants. Legally, they take priority. I can comp a motel for you and Grant 3 nights while we coordinate. Back to motels, purgatory between housed and homeless. I accepted, not wanting to displace children. The Four Palms Motor Lodge sat downwind of the meatpacking plant, its neon sign flickering like For Palace. We checked into room 117, 2 twin beds, 1 sputtering AC unit, and carpet patterned in suspicious constellations. Still, after the chaos, it felt like monastery quiet. Grant collapsed onto a bed. His cast was mottled from storm grime, the waterproof cover torn. I fetched a rag and knelt, cleaning streaks while he dozed. I studied his face, gaunt now, shadows under cheekbones, their own bruises of stress. This was my baby, grown wrong, in spots like a tree bent by constant wind, yet still alive, still capable of fruit. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. A crisp voice introduced herself as Marissa Klein, claims adjuster, Consoli Sure. My stomach clenched. I'm calling. Regarding policy WL78321 on property 119 Fulton, she said. Our structural investigators found code violations predating the incident. We must deny the claim. Denial. One syllable that felt like a foreclosure hammer. I pressed the speaker so Grant could hear. His eyes flicked open. Ms. Klein, I said, pulse banging. Those modifications were unauthorized. Policy requires regular inspections, she cut in. Negligence voids coverage. Can I appeal? You may submit supplementary evidence, but frankly, payouts on self-inflicted hazards are rarely approved. She hung up. Silence filled the motel room louder than transformer blast. Our house remained red-tagged. Now repairs would be out of pocket. I calculated quickly. Asbestos removal, rewiring, porch rebuild, code permit. North of $60,000. Neither of us had more than $600 combined. Grant swung himself upright. This is my fault, I'll fix it. How? Stared at peeling wallpaper. I'll find work. Anything. But the refinery suspension still loomed. Leg cast limited options. My chest tightened. I had small pension checks, but they vanished into medication and groceries like snow in desert. That Evening, Grant crutched to the vending machine and returned with 2 bottles of off-brand cola. As we sipped, he cleared throat. I've been researching community rebuild grants. There's a nonprofit, Rehome Rising, does volunteer-driven repairs for seniors. They prioritize heat damage victims. I applied on your behalf. My heart flickered hope, but experience cautioned. Waiting lists? 6 months usually, he admitted. But the director answered my email tonight. They saw news coverage. She's driving from Austin to evaluate tomorrow. Whether pity or publicity, I didn't care. Help was help. I squeezed his hand. Morning arrived with smell of bacon from adjacent room, another cruelty we couldn't afford. Grant dressed in cleanest clothes, wrinkled polo, cast wrapped with plastic bag to keep dust off. We took a city shuttle to Fulton Street. Yellow caution tape crisscrossed our sagging porch like a crime scene. Rehome Rising's white pickup waited at curb. Out stepped a tall woman with salt and pepper braid and steel-toe boots. Sandra Dumont, she introduced, handshake firm. Behind her clambered 3 young volunteers whose T-shirts read, "Build hope, not heat." She inspected damage, burn marks on soffit, collapsed boards, exposed wiring. She rattled off materials. We'll need 20 pressure-treated joists, 10 sheets OSB, new main breaker, conduit, GFCI outlets. Asbestos team first. Could run 50 grand retail. But with donors and volunteer labor, we cut to maybe 10. 10 was still Everest, but mountaineers exist. Sandra continued, "We only ask homeowners contribute sweat equity. Mrs. Whitcomb, can you help with painting? Grant, once cast off, you can apprentice under our licensed electrician." Grant's eyes lit, a path to redemption etched in copper wire. "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am." Sandra laid a clipboard on the hood of her truck. "Sign here. We'll slot you in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, we'll shore porch to prevent collapse. City will lift red tag for daylight access." Pen shaking, I signed. The moment ink dried, a gust of desert wind flapped the caution tape, less like warning, more like ribbon at a groundbreaking ceremony. That afternoon, Grant attended his rescheduled counseling session, a beige office smelling of chamomile and printer toner. I waited in lobby flipping through Better Homes and Gardens. Half-hour later, he emerged, eyes red but lighter. "Therapist thinks my fear of failure morphed into control issues," he said on ride back. Locking the door, I was locking out my own inadequacy. "What did you tell her?" "That I learned inadequacy burns hotter when it has no place to cool down." He managed wry smile. Days blurred into hopeful rhythm. Rehome volunteers. Installed temporary ramp so I could access kitchen and laundry to salvage belongings. Grant attended cooling center mornings, now teaching heat safety workshops. Even probation officer Morse dropped by a session, eyebrow raised approvingly. But progress is seldom straight. On the 8th evening at motel, Grant limped in, face ashen. "Refinery terminated me," he said, handing letter. "Reason. Code of conduct violation. Severance. None." I steadied him onto bed. He buried face in hands. "Without that income, how will we fund even the 10 grand? Or motel after comp nights expire? Shelter's still full." I opened my mouth with generic comfort, but a knock at our door interrupted. I answer. A courier handed envelope. Return address. Consoli Sure Appeals. My heart thundered. Had they reversed denial? I tore seal. Not a reversal. A bill. $4,200 owed for emergency inspector fees. Payable in 30 days. My knees went weak. Grant read over shoulder. He exhaled, long, low. "They're kicking us while we're dehydrated." Lightning flash might as well have struck my resolve because fury ignited. "Then we fight," I said. "We crowdfund, we bake sale, we speak at council, we write every reporter." Grant's eyes met mine, no longer a child's plea, but equal alliance. Together. We launched a Go Help Me page, Rebuild After Heatwave Tragedy. Grant filmed a raw video confession, no excuses, explaining negligence, lessons learned, plea to fund repairs so his mother wouldn't lose childhood home. I hesitated. Dislike? Of public vulnerability tugging, but clicked upload. Within hours, donations trickled. $5 from a cooling center regular, $20 from Carter and Connor's parents, $50 anonymous with love. Media picked up redemption angle. A morning show requested interview. Grant balked, camera trauma. But I reminded him stories change weather inside people's hearts. We agreed. Interview day, studio lights. Bright as midday sun. Host asked tough questions. Why lock your mother out? Grant's voice trembled but held. I spoke about unconditional love, boundaries, climate strain on family dynamics. The segment ended with host handing me a check. Shows. Charitable foundation donating $5,000. Tears blurred mascara. Donations surged. Rehome Rising fast-tracked asbestos team. Volunteers scheduled full rebuild starting following Monday. Hope soared. Until Friday afternoon when I answered unknown call. Mrs. Whitcomb? Detective Palmer, Concho County PD. We executed a warrant. At your residence. Found electrical parts matching serial numbers from a theft at the refinery tool crib. Need you and your son downtown for questioning. The room spun. Grant, across motel table balancing donation receipts, saw my color drain. What? He whispered. I breathed shallow. They think the conduit you installed might be stolen. Grant's face collapsed into horror. Mom, I borrowed scraps. They throw them out. His voice wobbled. But if they think it's theft, that's a felony. Detective Palmer's tone sharpened. Ma'am, please come voluntarily within the hour. As I hung up, the motel, AC coughed its last breath, clicking off into stale silence. The neon outside flickered again. 4 Palace Grant's crutches clattered to floor. He covered his eyes. All the rebuilding, counseling, donations, it'll vanish if I'm arrested. Rain began anew, tapping window like a judge's gavel. I reached for my purse with trembling fingers to grab car keys we didn't have, bus fare we couldn't spare. My son looked at me, waiting to see if I would stand between him and consequence or walk beside him into it. And I realized the hardest choice was not shielding him, nor condemning him, but choosing a path where both truth and hope could survive. Opened the door to the storm-lit corridor. Let's go, I said. My voice shook, but did not break. We face this, together. We stepped into the night, motel sign buzzing overhead, unaware that by dawn, one of us would be in a jail cell, and the other facing a decision that could shatter everything we'd rebuilt. The rain pursued us down the motel corridor like a detective determined to make an arrest before dawn. Each fluorescent fixture overhead fizzed, reflecting off puddles that leaked beneath door sweeps, so even the laminate floor seemed to quiver with anxiety. My shoulder ached beneath the healed but tight sutures. Grant's crutches clicked a staccato rhythm of dread. Somewhere beyond the clattering gutters, the meatpacking plant exhaled its constant brine and awful odor over the Four Palms Motor Lodge, reminding us that this town specialized in grinding living things down to bone. We reached the parking lot, faces pricked by horizontal sheets of rain. No patrol car waited. Detective Palmer had faith we'd come voluntarily. Still, every gust whispered flight, and I clung to Grant's elbow to anchor both of us to our better intentions. We sloshed to the bus stop on Travis, only to find service suspended because another transformer had blown 2 blocks east. A single taxi prowled the street, wipers frantic. I waved it down, praying the meter wouldn't devour the last $23 in my account. The driver, a thin woman wearing earbuds blasting Tejano ballads, gave us a half-sympathetic glance in the rear view. As we lurched through flooded intersections, Grant pressed his forehead to chilled glass. Neon reflections of payday loan stores streaked his cheeks like war paint. He whispered, "If they jail me tonight, Promise you won't burn yourself dry trying to fix it." I didn't answer because promises are currency best used sparingly. I had already spent too many on him. The Concho County Justice Center glowed under generator lights like a stranded cruise ship. Inside, a lone receptionist issued clip-on visitor badges and pointed us toward an interview room that smelled of instant coffee and old bologna. Detective Palmer, solid as a bank vault, waited with a younger officer whose uniform still creased sharp. Evidence bags lay on the table. Copper conduit segments, a coil of insulated wire, a scuffed tool belt stamped with refinery inventory codes. Palmer's voice was calm but edged. He explained the refinery reported missing materials after safety audit. Security footage showed Grant loading surplus scraps into his truck on 3 separate nights, each time-stamped after clock-out. You aware those materials are property of Concho Petroleum, not personal salvage? Grant shifted uncomfortably, cast scraping chair leg. During shutdowns, supervisors let us haul off scrap. Everyone does it. Palmer slid photos across laminate, theft policy posters, company memos. Rules changed last quarter. Environmental compliance. Materials must be cataloged, then sold to certified recyclers. The officer read aloud statute numbers. Theft between $2,500 and $30,000. A state jail felony. My stomach clenched. Grant swallowed. Rainwater dripped from his hair onto case files, darkening them like spreading guilt. Palmer offered a statement. Form. Sign your narrative. If you're cooperative, the DA may reduce to misdemeanor. Grant's hands trembled. I reached to steady the paper, but he tensed, wanting to hold the pen himself this time. He wrote slowly, describing the nights he'd gathered wire destined, he believed, for dumpsters. His intention to rewire our attic, to lower my mother's AC bill. Each sentence looked like penance carved on soft wood. When he finished, Palmer nodded and excused himself to process booking. The young officer escorted Grant away, crutches squealing. I followed until barred by a locked door that sealed with a hum, leaving me alone with the hollow scrape of an air conditioning vent. Minutes or hours later, time in police stations is made of taffy. The door reopened. Palmer re-entered, dripping umbrella in one hand, a sheaf of legal papers in the other. "Booking complete," he said, voice clipped by fatigue. "Arraignment in the morning. Bail initially set at $15,000. $15,000. More than the motel roof over our heads, more than every casserole I'd ever baked for fundraisers combined. My knees wanted to buckle, but pride stiffened them. Is a bondsman possible? 10% cash plus collateral, Palmer answered, eyes not unkind. But Mrs. Whitcomb, collateral requires property with clear title. Your home's encumbered. Encumbered, bound by liens, repair orders, insurance claims, and the heavy ribbon of caution tape still fluttering on Fulton Street. I stepped into the lobby just as dawn seeped gray through glass block windows. Rain tapered to mist, leaving the air tasting metallic and new. I called 3 bail bonds offices. 2 didn't answer. 1 laughed softly when I offered a patch of red-tagged real estate. I pocketed the phone and stared at vending machines humming against the wall, quiet machinery continuing its small duty while mine seemed impossible. In the corner, a corkboard displayed flyers, crime victim compensation, heat safety tips, and a volunteer lawyer clinic scheduled for Saturday, 48 hours away. I tore off the clinic's perforated tab, slid it into my pocket like a confession. A janitor wheeled by with mop bucket. He recognized me from news coverage, gave a shy nod. I almost asked for prayer, but words snagged behind embarrassment. So, I walked out into the uncertain morning alone. The taxi back to the motel would have cost $11 I didn't have. I opted to walk, a 3-mile trek past shuttered strip malls and desert scrub that still glistened with rain. The sky cleared to piercing blue, humidity gone, but already the sun rehearsed for its noon performance. My feet blistered inside thrift store sneakers. Still I walked, replaying Grant's trembling pen strokes. At a plaza on Ocotillo Road, ducked into a check-cashing outlet with bulletproof glass. I opened my worn purse. Inside, one silver locket engraved, LW plus GW 1976, my wedding gift from Grant's father before he deployed. I'd avoided pawning it even when widow's benefits. Stalled. Now I set it on the counter. The clerk, a teen with acrylic nails, squinted. "Sterling's cheap, ma'am. I can do 60. 60 wouldn't dent bail." I pocketed the locket with silent apology to my husband's memory and walked back into sunlight. By midday, I reached the Four Palms. The room reeked of damp carpet. I showered quickly, water lukewarm from overtaxed boiler, then opened laptop borrowed from shelter. Donation page refresh, 8 462s, plateaued since arrest rumors sparked on social media. Comment section split between encouragement and skepticism. If he stole, why should we pay? I replied with transparency, linking his statement, explaining arraignment. Some donors retracted pledges, phone pinged, text from Sandra at Rehome Rising. City halted rebuild until legal issues resolved. Sorry, Lorraine. Keep faith. Keep faith. Words like styrofoam cups, useful but crushed easily. Yet giving up felt heavier. I drafted an email to Concho Petroleum's Community Relations VP requesting meeting. I CC'd local newspaper editor, who championed our rebuild story, hoping a spotlight might pressure corporate hearts. Within an hour, the VP's assistant, sharp, efficient, replied, "Mr. Halverson is abroad. Earliest appointment next Thursday. Too late for bail even, if persuasion worked." I closed laptop, a metallic click like shutting hope in a box. At dusk, I made the decision. Visit Grant's former shift supervisor, Miguel Rojas, the man rumored to allow scavenging. He lived 30 minutes outside city limits in a trailer, park past the Pecos cutoff. No buses ran there, and taxis cost more than I had, so I borrowed Sam Hollister's old postal bicycle, still strapped with panniers. Sam, delivering mail across town, handed me helmet and a wordless pat on shoulder. The sun, low and red as a furnace door, smeared horizon. I pedaled through hot wind that smelled of creosote and cow dung. Memories surfaced, Grant at 10, wobbling. On a bike I'd bought secondhand, his father jogging alongside until the training wheels clattered to asphalt. "You've got it, champ." Now roles reversed. I chased freedom for him on a squeaky chain and middle-aged knees. By the time I reached Silver Spur Mobile Estates, dusk had cooled to velvet. Crickets tuned up. Miguel's trailer glowed orange through blinds. I knocked. Dogs barked inside. A woman's voice hushed them. Miguel opened door, recognition flickering. Under porch light. "Senora Whitcomb? I heard about Grant. Lo siento." He motioned me in. Linoleum creaked, ceiling fan rattled. I explained theft charges, bail, scrap policy confusion. Miguel sighed, rubbing temple. "See, policy changed, but memos came only English. Many guys missed details. I told them dumpster scrap still free to take." "Would you sign an affidavit saying that?" I asked. "Might reduce felony to misdemeanor. Lower bail." He hesitated, glancing toward hallway where small silhouettes huddled, his twin daughters peeking. "Company could fire me. I need this job." Desperation threatened to choke me. "Grant may serve prison. Please." Miguel's eyes softened. He looked at his daughters, then at me. "Give me till morning. I'll think." Outside, fatigue hit like a truck. My legs quivered. Head swam with heat despite night air. I mounted bike, wheels wobbling. Halfway down gravel drive, stars doubled. I dismounted, sat on curb, breathing shallow. Early signs of heat exhaustion? Or simply exhaustion? Headlights approached. Sam's. Ford Ranger. He'd tracked me via postal app GPS left active on bike. He rolled down window, cool air spilling. "Climb in, Lorraine." I slept most of ride back, waking when Sam eased me onto shelter cot despite motel upgrade vouchers. He tucked a bottled water into my fist. "You're not alone," he whispered before leaving. Morning of arraignment dawned blistering clear, as if last night's rain never existed. I wore my best, navy dress with faded lilies, pinning collar to conceal suture scar. Outside courthouse, reporters gathered again. Some recognized me, eyes hungry. I bypassed them, entering security, where a guard complimented my courage in soft drawl. Inside courtroom C, fluorescent lights flickered. I spotted Angela Morse in gallery and nodded. She returned measured nod. Grant entered in county-issue jumpsuit, orange fabric stark against his sun-starved skin. His cast now had a canvas sleeve. Our eyes met. He tried a smile, but fear. Swamp lurked behind it. Judge Espinoza presided again. Charges read, State Jail felony theft. Prosecutor recommended bail remain $15,000, citing community funds available and prior negligence. Public defender Karen Cho argued for reduction. Defendant cooperated, item value uncertain, materials designated scrap. Karen submitted Miguel's affidavit. He had driven to courthouse at dawn, document notarized. My heart soared grateful. The ID prosecutor objected. Hearsay until depot testimony. Judge overruled for bail purposes. Bail is reduced to $7,500, Espinoza declared. Defendant eligible for release upon posting bond or cash. $7,500, still Everest, but halfway scaled. Grant turned, tears shining. I held hand to heart. We'd find it. Outside, I dialed every donor of note, updated page, posted affidavit proof. Donations began inching again, 100, 250, even 1,000 from an anonymous former Heatwave skeptic. But bail clock ticked, processing closed at 8 p.m. We had until sundown. Mid-afternoon, refinery HR called Community Relations. VP had intervened remotely after seeing affidavit. He'd authorized a statement acknowledging scrap policy confusion. They would not pursue criminal restitution if Grant completed safety outreach hours. The DA signaled willingness to amend charges at future date. For bail, HR would front a zero interest. Loan of $5,000 to me personally, repayable over 3 years. I nearly dropped phone. I rushed to Fifth National Bank, endorsement letter in hand. The clerk processed cashier's check, but systems lagged. Power fluctuations plagued grid. My watch read 5:42 p.m. as I stepped onto sidewalk. Check clutched, hail of heat raining from sky. Traffic snarled. Signals blinked amber. I flagged a city cab. The driver, same Tejano ballad woman, remembered us. Courthouse? She guessed. Hang on. She wove through stalled commuters. Just as golden sun hit horizon, downtown lights flickered, then died. Entire grid section collapsed. Streetlights snuffed, store signs faded. Our cab's engine sputtered, fuel pump dependent on electrical relay, then died mid-intersection. People poured from offices, faces lit by phone screens, murmurs rising. Somewhere a generator kicked like a metal drum. Sirens began wailing, fire alarms triggered by outage. I stared at dark silhouette of courthouse 2 blocks away. Without power, the bail office would revert to manual books, slower. But if electronic locks failed, inmate transfers might freeze altogether. I tossed fare money on dashboard, driver waved it off, and sprinted. My shoes slapped boiling pavement. Heat rippled like a physical barrier. A memory flashed. Locked porch, sizzling doorknob. I pushed harder. Inside courthouse foyer, emergency lamps glowed dim red. Security guards shouted instructions. The bail clerk's window, shuttered, forms stacked. "We're offline," a deputy told desperate visitors. Bond releases paused until generators up. I held out cashier's check. "Clock's ticking. Processing closes 8. "Not tonight," deputy replied. "Could be hours. Maybe morning." Panic clawed throat. My son will spend night in county. He's injured. Before deputy could answer, a loud crack reverberated. Gunshot? No. Transformer 3 streets over rupturing. Windows trembled. People screamed. Emergency lights blinked off, plunging us into near darkness. In that breathless black, I felt check flutter in my trembling hand, smelled ozone, heard the thrum. Of fear accelerating. A flashlight beam sliced gloom. Deputy barked, "Everyone back!" Another boom outside, metal tearing. Someone shouted that grid failure sparked substation fire. Evacuation orders rumored. If courthouse evacuated, bond processing. Might suspend indefinitely. Grant could be transported to larger facility miles away, lost in legal churn. Heart pounding, I clutched cashier's check, a paper lifeline, and turned toward twin glass doors now blocked by crowd, sirens, and a gathering sense of chaos. Somewhere, inside that roiling dark, my son awaited dawn behind bars that might soon be miles beyond my reach. I inhaled scorched air, squared my shoulders, and took one decisive step toward the deputy's barricade. Because a mother's love, once set ablaze, burns brighter than any electrical fire, There is a moment in every calamity when the hush between heartbeats stretches wide enough to let courage slip in. I felt that slit of silence as I planted my shoes against the marble floor, cashier's check trembling in one hand, the other, raised toward a deputy braced like a dam against panicked citizens. Smoke-tainted air rolled through shattered louvers above the entrance, carrying that copper scent of electrical fire. Behind me, flashlights bobbed atop a sea of heads. Ahead, the corridor to bond administration loomed dark, power dead. But I could still picture the counter, the logbook, the stamp that would free my son. "Ma'am, buildings on lockdown until fire crews clear substation," the deputy repeated, sweat glistening at his temples despite the chill of emergency ventilation. His nameplate read, Sob Jack. "I can process bail manually," I insisted, slipping the check beneath his flashlight beam. "Cashier's check, proper amount. Statutes allow paper processing during outages." He hesitated. Duty warred with procedure. Behind him, a clerk in rumpled shirt called, "No power for the database. Release forms won't populate." I inhaled. Handwritten duplicates, reference numbers inserted later. This county used carbon copies well into 2003. You still store. The ledgers. A murmur rippled through the waiting crowd. Sobczak shot a glance at his supervisor, an older sergeant balancing a walkie crackling with fire updates. The sergeant frowned but finally nodded. "Give her 10 minutes. If the fire chief orders evac, we're done." Sobczak lifted the barricade rope. I ducked under, heart hammering, and followed him by flashlight past cubicles lit only by exit signs. The bond office door groaned open. Inside, stale coffee smell mingled with ozone. Filing cabinets loomed like sentinels. The clerk rummaged deep in a drawer, emerging with a triplicate pad so old the NCR paper had yellowed. He found a manual, release ledger, thick columns, lined by hand in black fountain pen. I signed, paid thumbprint fee with an inky stamp that squelched. My signature wavered, but space for love remained steady. Sobczak tore off the top sheet, tucked copy 2 into a binder, and slid the pink third copy to me. "Take this to receiving," he said. "They'll verify identity and start discharge. Pray the locks are battery-backed." I thanked him, pressing pink paper to chest like a holy writ, and hurried toward the holding wing. Hallways shimmered under sporadic emergency lamps. Somewhere overhead, sprinklers clicked ready but withheld. At receiving, a lone officer shone flash on paperwork. A grizzled civilian jailer checked driver's license, then picked up radio. "Central, release order manual for Whitcomb, Grant." "A, cell D4, static answered. Repeat static. He cursed under breath. "Comm lines shot, I'll walk it." He rose, keys jangling like iron rain. We passed rows of steel doors, breathing out odors of sweat and resignation. My steps slowed, listening for Grant's voice among coughs and mutters. The jailer stopped at D4, peered through slit. "Whitcomb, roll up." Keys jammed into lock. Servo motor whined on emergency battery and clunked open. Grant shuffled out. Orange jumpsuit replaced by gym shorts and cast. He must have changed before lockdown. His eyes widened on me, then on pink form in my grip. "Mom, how did you—" "Later," I said, my throat tightening. "Move, before the system thinks twice." The jailer hustled us back. An alarm klaxon warbled faint in distance. Firefighters had arrived. We exited through Sally Port, now powered by handheld override crank. Outside, the sky glowed red where the substation burned, painting courthouse columns in infernal hue. Grant squinted at the spectacle. His free hand found mine. "Whole town's breaking." "Breaking isn't broken," I answered, guiding him toward sidewalk. Streets pulsed with generator hum, emergency lights from ambulances parked at every other block. The taxi grid offline, we faced a 2-mile trek to Four Palms. Grant's crutches clicked as we navigated debris, fallen palm fronds, glass shards glittering like stars. My shoulder throbbed, but adrenaline dulled pain. At Commerce Avenue, an old school bus idled, volunteers loading evacuees bound for shelters outside. Outage zone. The driver, a retired Marine named Ellis whom I'd served with at a fundraiser, recognized me and waved. "Lorraine, need a lift?" We clambered aboard, finding seats among families clutching blankets. Diesel fumes mixed with popcorn scent from a machine left on at Carnival booth earlier that evening. The bus lurched forward, wipers squealing on. Near dry glass, the rain had fled, leaving air thick and warm again. As we bumped through darkened neighborhoods, Grant whispered, "Thank you." "I thought I'd see sunrise through bars." I brushed damp hair from his forehead. "You still have to face charges, sweetheart. Bail isn't absolution." "I know." He swallowed. "But freedom tastes sweeter when borrowed." Halfway to motel, crowd murmurs rose. People pointed out windows where digital billboards now glared error messages, batteries drained. Stoplights dark, a landscape unplugged. At Four Palms, we disembarked. The manager handed flashlights to guests, generator-powered only office. In our room, a single LED lamp blinked, casting skeletal shadows on peeling walls. Grant collapsed on. Bed, exhaustion overtaking morphine. I fetched ice from cooler lobby, kept running on freezer packs, and placed it along his swollen ankle above cast. He winced, then sighed relief. Moonlight streamed through curtains, illuminating Go Help Me page on my phone, battery 22%. Donations climbed past 9,000, momentum from blackout heroics perhaps. Comments overflowed with prayers and heart emojis. Between relief and disquiet, I drafted an update. Bail posted thanks to community. Rebuild still paused. Keep sharing. I clicked upload. Near midnight, generator groaned and died, plunging motel into silence dense as wool. Crickets resumed outside, reclaiming rightful soundscape. In that hush, Grant spoke. "Mom, what if the rebuild never finishes? Insurance gone, utilities failing. Maybe we should leave Concho Valley." "Leave?" I echoed, images of uprooting. My skeletal garden, sewing room, memories in cracked plaster. He stared at ceiling fan frozen mid-rotation. "Climate's only getting harsher. This town, it's a furnace with no thermostat." I considered the notion. Relocation grant maybe, start fresh in cooler state. Yet my heartbeat synced with the desert pulse, harsh but known. "Home isn't walls," I said quietly, but the sweat poured repairing them. He nodded, eyes drifting shut. Soon his breathing deepened. I lay awake, counting distant sirens, until sleep stole me too. Morning sunlight jabbed through gap in curtains, revealing dust motes swirling like alarmed honeybees. The motel's power still dead, but my phone vibrated. Cell towers back online. A text from Sandra. City restoring grid by evening. Rehome crew ready tomorrow if permit reinstated. Hope ticked upward. I brewed instant coffee on propane camp. Stove I'd borrowed from shelter. The smell coaxed Grant out of bed. His cast looked puffy where edges chafed. Counseling appointment 9 a.m., he murmured. No buses, I reminded. But we have Sam's bicycle and a skateboard, Carter. Alvarez loaned me for grocery trips. He laughed, the sound rusty but real. Picture this cast on a skateboard. A knock sounded. I opened door to find Deputy Lee, uniform wrinkled, circles under eyes. My heart lurched. Bad news? He shook head. Heard bail posted. Just checking welfare. Blackouts got everyone edgy. His gaze softened at Grant. Make your appointments, son. Grant straightened. Yes, sir. Lee shifted foot. Also, community center hosting town meeting at noon about grid failures and heatwave response. Voices like yours should be heard. He looked at me, added, both of you. We promised attendance. Grant opted crutches rather than wheelchair. We left early, trekking 6 blocks to counseling clinic housed in a strip mall still without power. Sessions moved outdoors under shade cloth behind building. Folding chairs formed a circle of heatwave survivors. An ER nurse, a grocery clerk, suffering panic attacks, a farmer whose crops crisped. The therapist, Dr. Yang, guided discussion about control versus acceptance. Grant spoke hesitantly of locking the door, of fear of failing as provider. Listeners didn't judge. Their nods stitched, his words into collective fabric. When session ended, Dr. Yang handed each participant a small stone painted with single word. Grant's read, trust. Mine read, rest. We pocketed stones and headed toward town meeting at community center. Auditorium buzzed like a beehive plugged into megaphone. City officials, power company execs, reporters, residents fanned themselves with flyers. Mayor Alvarez stood at podium under banner, building resilience to extreme heat. She announced grants for home insulation, stricter codes for DIY electrical, and a neighbor check app pilot. I glimpsed my story's fingerprints on policy, variants. During public comment, Rehome's Sandra urged faster permit approvals. A retiree demanded subsidies for solar panels. Then Deputy Mayor called my name. I walked to microphone, palms sweaty. I recounted last night's manual bail process, praising officers who adapted while condemning infrastructure fragility. Resilience isn't about bigger generators, I said, voice surprisingly steady. It's about teaching every hand to find the switch when the lights go out. Go out. Go out. Applause scattered, then grew, a breeze of goodwill. Mid-speech notifications pinged phone relentlessly. I ignored until stepping aside. Subject lines: media request, podcast interview, emergency grants. Amid flood, one message glowed: Concho. Community Foundation, grant approved, $12,000 for critical home repairs. My knees wobbled. Sandra squeezed my shoulder, reading over screen. Grant joined, eyes shining. Mom, 12,000 covers materials. Noon sun blazed, but hope shaded us. We walked to Fulton Street to share news with neighbors. They gathered, fanning themselves, while city electricians restrung lines from portable poles. Rehome volunteers hammered braces under porch. Wreath of crushed bluebonnets now replaced by potted succulents. Drought-proof symbolism. Carter and Connor bicycled up brandishing poster. Board, welcome home Grant and Lorraine. We got your back. My chest expanded with gratitude wider than the valley. Inside charred living room walls stripped to studs, it smelled of fresh lumber and possibility. Sandra mapped repair timeline. Porch rebuild first, wiring next, insulation, finally drywall. She needed homeowner on site daily. I agreed instantly. Grant asked if he could apprentice despite caste. Sandra winked. You'll be my gopher. Fetch, Learn, stay out of power saw path. Late afternoon, grid hummed alive. Ceiling fans spun for first time since incident. Cool air licked sweat off necks. The house, though skeletonized, breathed again. As crew packed tools, Mayor Alvarez arrived with 2 camera crews, PR for Resilience Initiative. She interviewed us on porch, camera lights harsh but breeze kind. Halfway through, I caught myself repeating community. So often it felt mantra. After take, we retreated inside where plywood floor flicked with sunset light. And there, with dust motes swirling, I reached midpoint of the tale I'd spent so many breaths telling. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Grant chuckled at my sudden slogan. Practicing for your own channel? He teased. I shrugged, cheeks warming. Old dogs, new microphones. Evening settled lavender across desert, weave I. Returned to motel to pack belongings. Our stay there funded only until tomorrow. Neighborhood families split tasks. Mr. Randall offered spare room while repairs ongoing. Amelia Trujillo insisted we take her guest suite since her grandniece. Postponed visit. Carter and Connor's parents campaigned for us to occupy their RV. We debated, choosing Amelia's quiet casita out back of her poodle-filled bungalow. Moving boxes under porch light, Grant suddenly hissed, clutching thigh near rod insertion. I rushed. Incision site seeped pink fluid through gauze. Infection? My pulse spiked. We cleaned wound, redressed, and planned clinic visit at dawn. Night deepened. Wind carried scent of creosote blossom after rare rain. In Amelia's casita, small but clean, I lay on sofa bed listening to Grant breathe in adjacent kitchenette living space. His breaths caught occasionally. Pain, dreams, each hitch twisting inside me. At 2 a.m., phone vibrated. I groggily answered. A robotic voice delivered emergency alert. Severe heat wave resumes tomorrow. Highs 115 degrees. Rolling blackouts possible due to substation damage. My mouth went dry. Repairs on Fulton would halt if power cut again. Grant's fragile leg would risk infection in swelter. I rose, padded to kitchenette. Moonlight silvered his sleeping face. The painted stone labeled Trust lay on counter beside antibiotic tube. I held my own stone. Rest, feeling its smoothness. Trust, rest, opposites I had yet to reconcile. Suddenly, Grant stirred, eyes opening. Mom? Go back to sleep, I whispered. He winced, shifting. Can't. Legs fire. He glanced. At phone in my hand, saw alert banner. More heat. I nodded, sinking onto chair. Silence thickened. After a moment, he said, Sometimes I think I'm cursed. Every step forward sparks a new blaze. I took his hand. Maybe you're flint. Sparks only mean potential for warmth if guided, he considered, eyelids heavy. Then we need good fire breaks. Plans, I agreed. First clinic, then hardware store for portable AC units. We'll store meds in neighbor's fridge if blackouts hit. He smiled faintly, drifting back, to sleep. I returned to sofa, but sleep evaded. Outside, dry thunder rolled, storm cells evaporating before rain reached ground. An unsettling omen called Virga. Flashes illuminated skyline, revealing column of smoke still rising from crippled substation. Crews hadn't fully extinguished smoldering transformers. I thought, one spark on hot wind could leap miles, ignite tinder-dry chaparral bordering town. A wildfire would devour our half-finished home, the lumber stacked like kindling, fear pressed down until dawn. We reached urgent care clinic by 8. Nurse frowned at seepage, prescribed stronger antibiotics, cautioning about osteomyelitis. Keep leg elevated lower temps, she said. Power might cut midday, cooling essential. We purchased portable evaporative cooler using donated funds. At Fulton, rehome team rolled in at 9, hammers singing. Grant perched on shaded porch, leg up, passing screws, absorbing lessons on amperage and grounding. His eyes brightened with each task, confidence rewiring itself. By noon, heat shimmered. City announced rolling blackout starting Sector 3, our sector, at 2 p.m. Sandra doubled pace, aiming to safely cap new wiring before outage. I fetched electrolyte popsicles for crew, 45 p.m. A dusty wind picked up, temperature 113. Firewatch sirens wailed distant. My phone pinged. Wildfire reported West Ridge, moving east. I scanned horizon, a brown plume rising, spreading like spilled ink. Sandra cursed. If fire hits transmission lines before we finish grounding, house becomes hazard. She ordered. Volunteers to stow combustibles, seal breaker box, 2:07 p.m., power cut. Fans died. Compressor silenced. Air thickened instantly. Grant's cast area glistened sweat. Sirens grew louder. Fire trucks raced along Ridge Road. News alerts flooded timelines. Evacuation advisory for western subdivisions. Neighbors gathered. Radios, pets, go bags. Amelia's poodles yipped, sensing unrest. I weighed choices. Stay finish grounding versus flee. Sandra assessed wind map. Ridge fire could jump highway within 2 hours. Grant gripped my hand, spoke hoarsely. If flames come, our new wiring, unfinished, could arc, feed fire into attic. Sandra nodded grim. We must finish ground rod connection or cut power feed entirely. But feed already off due blackout. Unknown when grid back. She looked at us. Decision time. We can risk staying 1 hour to complete or abandon and hope lines don't re-energize. Mid-fire. Sirens screamed again, closer. Heat made air ripple like liquid glass. I tasted metal, fear or copper dust. My gaze met Grant's. Sweat trickled along his jaw. Determination burned there too. A single ash flake drifted onto porch railing, a dark snowflake heralding inferno. I drew breath to choose, but a deafening crack thundered from the ridge, and the entire western sky blossomed into orange fury, wind roaring toward us like the mouth of a furnace. A furnace wind barreled down the ridge, bowing mesquite, and sending tumbleweeds spinning like fiery pinwheels ahead of the main blaze. The sky wasn't sky anymore. It was a yawning kiln, orange licked with black tongues. In that instant, any line between house fire and wildfire blurred. Our half-rebuilt bungalow sat in the bullseye of a storm made of cinders. Sandra Dumont's voice cut through the roaring like an axe through rotten lumber. Lorraine, the ground rod, or the master disconnect? Pick one. We've got 15 minutes tops. I stared at the copper clamp half-tightened to the 8-foot rod we'd sunk beside the porch. One more torque, and every circuit in the house would funnel stray voltage safely into soil, safe if the grid came back. But the rising wall of flame made any second here feel like borrowed time. Grant perched on a lawn chair, leg elevated, face slick with pain and determination. His eyes tracked mine, silently pleading to finish the work he could not. Wind slammed the porch again, pelting, us with grit hot enough to sting. The caution tape around joists snapped free, whipping against Sandra's tool belt. Somewhere down the block, a propane grill exploded, whump, rattling windows. I squeezed the nut driver in my palm. We ground it, I said. Then we cut. The feed. Both. Sandra's mouth twitched approval. Ruthie's crew can sever the service line at pole, but we've got to hustle. Ruthie Barr, still in lineman boots, came jogging from Randall's yard with a fiberglass hot stick and bolt cutters nearly her height. Smoke streaked her cheeks like war paint. County gave me 30 minutes of discretionary authority. She barked. After that, utilities take over and it's every panel for itself. First torque dropped to my knees at the rod. Copper already radiated heat absorbed from air. My gloveless hand blistered but held as I seated the lug. The driver refused final quarter turn. threads gritty with blown sand. I thought of every time I'd twisted jar lids for church potlucks, coaxed bolts on a rickety bicycle for Grant. Muscle. Memories lit by adrenaline. I braced, twisted. The nut squealed, then seated with decisive click. Grounding complete. Done, I shouted. Sandra waved approval, already sprinting toward back wall where service mast rose. Ruthie vaulted railing, landing with a crack that made Grant flinch. She planted the hot stick, preparing to yank fusible links once Sandra cut neutral. The choreography of safety looked like a dance designed seconds before curtain. The heat within flakes of ash now swept horizontal. The temperature leaped so fast, breath burned lungs. Crew members soaked rags in the cooler's melted ice, tying them over mouths. Carter and Connor Alvarez raced up carrying buckets from neighbor's pool. "Where do we dump?" they yelled. "Along the foundation," Sandra ordered. "Keep embers from crawlspace vents." Children, teenagers really, sloshed water across siding that sizzled on contact, raising ghostly steam. Inside, Amelia's poodles yapped from her bungalow. She was still loading her sedan. My stomach clenched. Amelia moved slow with arthritis. "Second." "Torser." Hardy pivoted toward Grant. His cast was damp, but cheeks flushed crimson beyond sunburn. "You need to get in Randall's truck, AC on," I urged. He shook head, eyes aflame like the ridge. "Not until service is cut. Mom, you saved me from jail. Let me watch you finish." Finish. A word flammable with pride. I squeezed his hand and rose. The disconnect Sandra balanced on ladder propped against eave, hacksaw buzzing through rigid metal conduit. Sparks arced, vanishing into smoky gloom. Below, Ruthie poised to shove telescoping stick into transformer tap. I steadied. Ladder base, nostrils full of creosote. The saw bit through last thread. Conduit clanged, and Sandra let out a battle cry. "Clear!" Ruthie jammed tool upward. Contact clack. Disconnects tripped. She pulled. Porcelain cutouts fell away, leaving service drop dead. House severed from grid. We exhaled, but the wind snatched our breath. Mocking relief. Evac Ordursa County Sheriff Cruiser blared down Fulton. Mandatory evacuation. Fire line 2 miles and closing. All residents to high school gym. Randall revved his pickup, loading neighbors in bed. Amelia's sedan still, idled, half-packed. She hobbled, dragging dog kennels. I sprinted, grabbing 2 carriers while Sandra and Ruthie secured tools to take. They'd seen too many rebuilds lost because volunteers left equipment behind and insurance balked. Grant tried to stand. His good leg wobbled. "Leave crutches," he gasped. "Too slow. Wheel me." I scanned. The garden dolly could hold him. Connor raced to fetch it. We strapped Grant with bungee cords, cast protruding like alabaster prow. The ember as we turned toward street, a glowing ember, size of golf ball, whirled onto attic vent screen. It lodged, pulsing angry red. Smoke trickled inside hollow rafters. Sandra cursed. "If that catches the new lumber..." She sprinted back up ladder, slapping vent with damp towel. But the ember slipped through mesh, tumbling into insulation void. A tendril of smoke pushed out Eve. "We need hose line," I yelled. Connor dragged one from Randall's spigot, but water pressure sputtered. Municipal pumps offline. "Trickle." "Only," he cried. Sandra's eyes went hard. "Lorraine! Attic hatch! Quick!" She bounded inside. I followed. Grant shouted protest, but smoke swallowed his voice. Into the throat house interior sweltered. Bare studs framed rooms like ribcage of Leviathan. At hallway, attic pull cord dangled. Sandra yanked, plywood door dropped. A wave of furnace heat belched. Smoke poured above our heads. I coughed, dizzy. She handed me a flashlight. "Spot the ember. I'll hit with extinguisher." She ascended rungs, compressor-slung bodybuilding style. I followed 2 steps, shoulder, scar protesting. Beam sliced gloom, revealing ember lodged on new rafter. Flames licked sawdust curls. Left beam, I rasped. Whoosh! Powder blanketed ember. It hissed, dimmed, but flames persisted deeper where powder couldn't reach. The world shrank to the rush of air and the low, iron moan of the bell careening toward us. Every detail etched itself onto my mind as if time etched glass. Amelia's hair flying silver against the flame-lit sky, the cracked adobe under my elbows, my own breath tearing from lungs too old for heroics yet refusing to quit. Instinct, not reason, saved us. I dropped my weight backward, hauling Amelia with me as the bell's bronze lip whistled by inches from her skull. It struck the parapet instead. Stone burst into powder. The impact jarred through my spine, rattling teeth, but the bell ricocheted, clanged across tiles, and lodged upside down in a broken skylight frame, its mouth gaping like a planet eater. Jolted free of its yoke, it settled with a groan that sounded disturbingly like relief. For half a second, I thought we were safe. Then the roof beam the bell had occupied snapped with a crisp crack, unleashing a shower of sparks into the pigeon droppings that already smoldered. Fire bloomed along, the rafters, bright as welding arcs. Smoke roiled, turning my next breath into glass shards. Amelia slumped, coughing, one hand still clamped on my sleeve. Peaches whimpered somewhere below. I forced focus. Get off the roof. Get her down. Get the dog. Do it now. I scanned the courtyard. Through the haze, I spotted Ruthie's bucket truck, nosing past the mission gate, its boom rising like a mechanical sunflower. On the ground, Grant, crutches discarded, leaned on Deputy Lee, pointing up and shouting directions I couldn't hear. Even from 2 stories high, I read the terror in his posture. He'd watched a bell fall and feared the next thing to drop would be me. The bucket swiveled, creaking until its metal lip hovered 6 feet from the parapet. Ruthie, harnessed to the boom, stood inside gripping a coiled rescue line. "Lorraine, tie off!" she bellowed, voice cutting through wind and sirens. I looped rope around Amelia's waist, secure but gentle against brittle bones. Heat pushed at our backs, flames chewing roof timbers. Ruthie unreeled slack, muscle memory from storm season rescues guiding her. I half-lifted, half-rolled Amelia over the low wall into the bucket. Ruthie hauled, locking safety clip. I wanted to follow, but a shrill yap reminded me of Peaches. The dog's leash dangled 2 feet below, caught on a drainpipe cleat. "Dog's trapped," I shouted. "I've got Amelia. Get the mutt," Ruthie answered, already lowering bucket. I dropped flat, scooting to ledge. Heat shimmered beneath, but there was Peaches perched on a sandstone corbel, eyes moon-wide. If I missed the grab, she'd plummet into smoking shrubbery. I whispered nonsense comfort, stretched my arm, and, ignoring Suture's screaming, snatched the leash just as the corbel cracked loose. Stone fell. Peaches and I stayed. New problem. The bucket was descending. No time for its return before roof. Became kiln. I clipped leash carabiner to belt loop and searched for another path. The bell offered one. Lodged at angle, its crown met a beam still intact, forming a slope to the hatch where we'd entered. Flames licked around but hadn't exploded through yet. I crawled, guiding Peaches along the bell's gritty surface, metal scorching my palms through work gloves. Smoke blurred vision. Every breath a gamble. But I reached hatch, shoved it open, and dropped into stairwell thick with heat yet mercifully below flashover. Peaches scrambled behind. Down spiral steps we staggered, hacking. At foot of tower, Father Delgado waited with 2 volunteers wielding wet blankets. They wrapped Amelia's dog and guided us toward sanctuary air of nave, where portable fans whirred. On generator. I saw Ruthie's bucket shift to fetch me, but finding I'd vanished, it pivoted away. Reunion of 3 hearts Grant hobbled inside moments later, skin smeared with ash, eyes flooded. He braced on Pew as I limped forward. We collided in a grasp, fierce and clumsy, Peaches squashed between. Neither words nor apologies fit the moment. Only pulse against pulse mattered. Nurse Trina rushed with IV kit for Grant. His fever spiked to dangerous edge. She led him to makeshift infirmary near altar, where stained glass saints watched triage. Amelia rested on cot, oxygen cannula easing her breaths, whispering thanks to every passerby. Peaches curled atop her lap, miracle and mischief incarnate. Outside, wildfire roared closer, but adobe walls held. I sank on kneeler, lungs heaving cedar-scented air mixed with incense and melting wax. Over the PA battery speaker, an emergency broadcast crackled. Aerial tankers en route from San Angelo. Containment perimeter aims to protect mission zone and hospital corridor. Brace for low overflights. Minutes later, thunder not from storm, but from steel, a DC-10 scooped low over ridge, disgorging crimson retardant that streaked sky bloody. Flames hissed, slowed. A convoy of brush trucks advanced behind chemical curtain, bulldozers carving fire breaks. The collective exhale of evacuees sounded like ocean surf. By dusk, incident commanders declared the mission secure. Hotspots smoldered, but wind shifted south, steering main front away toward fallow fields scheduled for controlled burn last spring. Low grass offered little fuel. Sirens quieted into far-off echoes of mop-up operations. Aftermath embers paramedics transported high-risk patients, including Grant, to a field clinic at fairgrounds where portable AC units rattled. I rode alongside, his hand a furnace under mine, yet grip steady. IV antibiotics dripped, fever tapered. At sunrise, pink light kissed rows of evacuee tents. Grant slept at last. I stepped outside to find Sandra, Ruthie, and Deputy Lee conferring. With city engineer. Smoke lay in blue ribbons along ridge. Sandra beckoned me aside. "We drove by Fulton at dawn," she began, eyes shining tired hope. "Your bungalow still stands. Attic charred, but porch, walls, all there. The disconnect and ground rod you insisted on probably saved it when lines re-energized at 3 a.m. Fire crews said meter sparked but died in soil." Relief buckled my knees. Ruthie steadied me. Sandra pressed a sooty architectural drawing into my hands. Updated plan with fire-resistant hardy board, metal roof panels, and rooftop sprinklers. "We're finishing," she vowed. "This time, heat, wind, or heaven won't stop us." Resurrection. Days re-entry to neighborhoods phased by zones. Hours reopened 48 hours later. Ashes still warm. Rehome volunteers swept debris while FEMA inspectors tagged hazardous trees. We stayed nights at Randall's spare room, walls covered in Cowboys posters that bizarrely comforted sleepless nerves. Grant's infection waned, cast remained, but he insisted on returning to site in wheelchair. Sandra assigned him blueprint duties, aligning conduit routes with new, solar-ready design. Watching him sketch, I glimpsed the boy who once built Lego cities across our living room rug, except now the blocks were copper and code books. Insurance? Consoli Sure reversed claim denial after wildfire declared federal disaster. Funds flowed. Not all, but enough. Community Foundation grant combined with donations bridged gap. People wrote notes on every check. For courage, for second chances. Legal cloud cleared too. With refinery affidavit and wildfire heroism viral online, someone filmed the roof rescue naturally, DA reduced theft to Class C misdemeanor. Fine and additional service hours at fire safety workshops. Courtroom applause nearly disturbed. Bailiff's composure. Grant paid fine from Go Help Me overflow, then redirected leftover dollars to a new nonprofit pot. Cooling Hearts Fund. Microgrants for air conditioning repairs in elder homes. I joined board meetings, discovering I liked spreadsheets almost as much as quilting, each column a patch in community comforter. Porch of Promises. 3 months later, A rare September thunderstorm rimmed valley with lavender clouds and, mercifully, rain. It christened our completed bungalow as guests arrived for open house potluck. Fresh hardyboard gleamed sage green. A metal roof glinted, like armor. Solar panels tilted south, gift from Concho Petroleum's image repair budget. A slim sprinkler line ringed eaves, ready to mist at first scent of smoke. Grant wheeled onto the new cedar ramp. He'd graduated from cast to physical therapy brace. He carried the cracked blue bonnet wreath salvaged from debris, now threaded, with metal wire melted from the fallen bell, a keepsake forged in trial. He hung it by the door, stepped back, and met my eyes. "Last time this porch saw a crisis, I was its cause," he said quietly. "Today, maybe I'm part of its cure." "You are," I answered, voice thick. "And so is every neighbor who hammered a nail or held a hose." Inside, Amelia, hobbling with cane but radiant, set her famous tres leches cake on counter. Peaches patrolled for crumbs, a tiny fire survivor wearing a bandana reading, "Woof if you resilience." Father Delgado blessed the meal, sprinkling water that shimmered in pendant lights like substation sparks transfigured into benediction. Later, as laughter tangled with fiddle music from Carter's Bluetooth speaker, I drifted to backyard where dusk painted sky copper. Grant joined, inhaling petrichor. Crickets chirred from regrown sage. "I start official electrician apprenticeship Monday," he said. "Ruthie's union sponsored me." Pride flared, steady and warm, not the scorch of ego, but hearth heat. "Your father would be proud," I whispered. He squeezed my shoulder. "You taught me how to rewire more than a house, Mom. You rewired me." Tears threatened. Good tears. I tilted head, watching first stars wink alive. Somewhere, a transformer hummed healthy current, no longer foe, but servant. Epilogue of light weeks later, Cooling Hearts Fund installed its 50th window unit for an octogenarian couple. Grant trained teenage volunteers on safe installation. I delivered lemonade. City app Neighbor Check launched, pinging households during heat advisories. The first alert showed over 85% engagement, a new record useful beyond metrics. It saved lives when another heatwave struck. Our bungalow became demonstration site for resilient retrofits. Reporters still visited, but fame's glare faded into steady glow of purpose. Every time I locked the door now, it wasn't fear, but stewardship guiding hand. One evening, I stepped onto porch alone. Cicadas buzzed, but air felt merciful. I ran fingers over wreath, bell metal warm from sun, bluebonnets, silk bright. After all the locking out and being locked out, the symbol now guarded entrance without bars, a reminder that thresholds are meant to invite, not exile. Grant called from living room, "Dinner's ready, Ms. Forewoman." An inside joke, born the day I torqued that ground lug. I smiled, turning toward voices of neighbors gathering again, ready to share bread in a house they helped resurrect. I paused, soaking in glow of low-voltage porch lights, powered by solar battery that hummed like a gentle promise. Heat would come again, storms too, but foundations set in compassion rarely crack. I stepped inside, closed door soft, and felt, finally, home. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.